I started wondering, you could tell that whatever they were hearing was affecting them. It had an effect on their behavior, but nobody knew what they were hearing, and nobody was curious, except me. And I'd ask, the staff would go, they're just hallucinating. But, well, what are they being told? Because obviously it's affecting their behavior. Oh, they're just hallucinations. Forget about it. So I'm like, why aren't they even curious? Why aren't they in the least bit curious? And we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of staff at this place. I mean, it was massive. Nobody was curious about what the voices were saying.
When you said this, it blew my mind. There's no test for chemical imbalance. So they say you're chemically imbalanced. Okay, so what's the standard? Because I recently got my blood work done to see if my metabolic rate is good, my organs are good, all these things are good. And there's a standard, like this is the range, this is when you're healthy. So what is the range of your brain's chemistry? And they're like, we don't have one. And I was like, what? And so
they don't.
So when they say you're chemically imbalanced, they don't know what the standard is, what the chemical is, or anything. They just say that.
They don't even know what the neurological balance, the biological, the neurotransmitter balance of the brain should be.
Exactly.
They don't even know that.
Yeah.
They don't have any kind of baseline. So that's one of the things that I saw when I was working at the state hospital. I'd ask all the doctors, well, what do you think causes schizophrenia? The honest ones would say, I don't know.
Yeah.
The other ones were, oh yeah, it's a chemical imbalance of the brain. So I'm thinking, I was watching these guys. I mean, I was working shoulder to shoulder with them virtually all the time. Never did I see them do any kind of lab test, any kind of blood test, any EEG, EKG, any kind of any kind of valid test, any kind of test to find out what the brain chemical balance should be. You think if it's a chemical imbalance, they'd want to know what the baseline was, what chemicals were out of balance and how much. No, that was all trash. That I never, ever saw, and even to this day, did I ever see a psychiatrist give any kind of test to get any kind of baseline as to what this chemical imbalance was or what the balance should be. They don't have one. It does not exist. It never existed. It was this biochemical imbalance crap was made up by Eli Lilly when they came out with Prozac. They knew it was a bunch of crap at the time, but they needed some way to explain why their antidepressants work. So they came up with this. And they went, oh yeah, this explains mental illness. And who's going to challenge us on this?
And don't you ever get this feeling like they're gaslighting the world by they're denying the spiritual realm, and they're just gaslighting everybody. And you're like think about how many people could be so healed if you just explain that there's a spiritual realm like that. It makes things make sense, and then they can start dealing with it versus like, oh no, it's your brain, like your brain. We take these drugs.
Right. Something's wrong with you,
Yeah.
Like you said. Yeah, and they're gaslighting the entire planet.
Well, and I like how you shouted out Islam too, because Islam has a lot of knowledge about the jinn and the demons too. You know,
much more than the Christians.
They
the
do
Christians kind of blow it off as like, oh, that's a 2,000-year-old fairy tale. That's very, very dangerous.
That's why I started looking into Islam, is because I was raised Catholic, and I'll shout out the Catholics that there's a type of Catholic that still has understanding of the demonology, demon realm. They're out there. Like, I'm not saying all Christian, obviously, but mainstream Christianity at this point is denying the existence of demons. And so
that's very dangerous.
It's dangerous, man.
And the voices that the schizophrenics hear are them.
Yeah, exactly.
They're the demons. They are not the person.
And go ahead.
They insert those thoughts into the schizophrenic's mind also. And since we're told from the time we're little kids that every thought that you have come into your head belongs to you, then they just assume yeah, that's me. That's who I am. If you believe that, that's what you become. If you believe what these voices are telling you, you become that. And it's very evil.
Trauma opens people up to this negativity a lot. And I think that's why
Yes.
they push child abuse. And it's
Right.
just so
That's
obvious
exactly
now.
right.
Yeah.
I had one guy write me. Now, he was hearing voices. And I said, what have you found that helps you? He said, well, I go to TikTok and I got these videos of kids laughing. He said it drives the voices nuts.
Yeah.
I found that real interesting. He said they can't stand it.
Yeah, they hate
they
seeing
can't-
happiness.
That's right. And they can't stand families being together and happy. They can't stand relationships being together and unfractured. They'll go into the head of whoever's hearing them and say, well, your boyfriend's cheating on you, or your girlfriend's cheating on you, or your wife's cheating on you, your husband. They'll keep inserting those kind of thoughts to break up the relationships. They don't want people to have good relationships.
So
they don't
true,
want them
man.
to have happy families.
Yeah, and the Muslims have this thing where they say when a demon gets the wife and husband to fight, they get to sit on Satan's throne for the day. Like they think that's like the ultimate for a demon is to get the family unit to break. And bro, I've had that. Like I've had like thoughts that I thought were my own be like they want to get that husband and wife to fight so bad because that unit, you know, is the protection of the child, and every time you have a functional child that grows up into an adult, their little demon realm doesn't get.
Yeah, with the anger and the hatred and the conflict, and you look at the world right now. I mean, there's in the last 2,000 years or so, or 1,000, I think it's 1,000 years. There's only been 273 years of peace.
Yeah.
The rest, there was some war somewhere in the world, and it's due to these things.
It is, man.
The biggest joke that the devil ever pulled on people is convincing them that these demons and, you know, Satan do not exist. You're the one who chooses where you want to put your attention. Just like the Indians, the Native Americans said, you got two wolves on each shoulder. The one that you feed is the one that's going to grow.
Yeah.
The thoughts you pay attention to are the thoughts that are going to grow. So, you know, the big thing is people don't realize that their thoughts don't come from them. That their mind is like a radio receiver. You know, they tune into these frequencies, and schizophrenics are tuned to a very low frequency. You know, and the voices want to keep them there, so they can try to force that dial, but the voices turn it back. They don't want people thinking good thoughts. They don't want people being happy. They don't want people laughing at comedians. You know, they don't find anything funny.
It's all these like deep insecurities and like childhood traumas. And I think that's why some of these quote unquote elite families will intentionally abuse their kids to open that doorway so that like the other realm can tell them things. And there are a type of demons, in my opinion, that aren't screaming at you and telling you to jab a knife into your eye. They're telling you like what will work on a global level with like financial enslavement. You know what I mean? And then he started talking about how like the voice would know something that it couldn't possibly have known. And I've talked to our mutual friend Patrick about that too. And I've just seen behavior that doesn't make any sense outside of, you know, the entities, you know?
No, especially with meth addicts. I mean, when I talked to them in the prison, a number of them would say that the voices would tell them where to go and when to be there in order to get more meth. And if they showed up at the place and time that they were told, some stranger would walk up with more meth.
It's crazy.
Just like that. There was a number of them, they would say the voices told them which houses to break into, generally where the loot was, when the people were up in the house, and where to go run and hide. You know, there's one guy said he broke into the house, the people were in there, he was looking for the loot, the voices told the people were up, you know, and they warned him to get out of there. So the people called the police, and this guy got the loot. He took the time to get the loot, and then he jumped out the window, and he went to run down this alley. And the voices said, "Don't do that. They're coming. The cops are coming down that alley. Go around this other way." So he goes around the other way, and there's a dumpster there. And they said, "Go jump in the dumpster, hide in the dumpster." So he's hiding in the dumpster. The cops come. They're walking right past, or driving right past where he was. And as soon as they passed, the voices said, "Okay, now get out of the dumpster and run." All right. So he did that and got back to his apartment, and the voices said, "Good job, good job." And he said, "Well, no, not good job. I left all the loot in the dumpster." They said, "Not a problem. You just go back and get it in the morning." You know, they would know stuff in a lot of cases that the patient himself didn't know.
The drugs would shrink their brain, and the voice couldn't like eat. And so they're like, "You're ruining my." Is that? I want to ask you about that. So when you talk,
that shrinking of the brain is over a long period of time. So what they found with the autopsies of patients in mental hospitals, they would do autopsies on them and see that their brains were shrunken like walnuts.
Yeah.
And they go and believed in it. They started giving these phenothiazines to monkeys and rats and other animals, and they found that their brains shrunk. That's the long-term effect of these drugs.
Bro, is that why they call them shrinks? Is that why? Is that it? Like when they're like, "Oh, I'm going to go get my head shrunk by a shrink." Is it literally about shrinking their brains?
I don't know if that's where it came from or not, but it's the truth.
It's pretty funny though, right?
The term fits. And I noticed that even when I was working at the state hospital. Before the voices come, the patient had a fair amount of energy. After the voices attacked, they didn't have any energy. They were drained.
Purpose is huge. Like isolation is where it festers. When they're just
That's where they want.
Yeah, when they're alone all the time, thinking about dumb shit, looking on the internet all day. You get them to like do an actual job. That's why I think the demons like welfare. I'm not even kidding, because
they want the person bored and just listening to their bull crap all day.
Exactly.
That's the worst thing that could be done.
Actually working is really good for men, especially. It's like,
right.
Even if it's menial, like pushing a mop, doesn't matter, moving bricks, doing anything I always call it like, that's how I meditate. Like I don't meditate like sitting around. Like I meditate by like doing physical tasks, like building a fence or wrangling animals. And if you're doing that, the voices are not there. Like they can't really do it.
Well, it is a battle for your attention.
Totally.
They are fighting for your attention. They will do anything to get your attention. You can't ignore them because they get louder. Now, I've seen psychiatrists tell patients numerous times, "Oh, they're just hallucinations. I'll ignore them." And I remember the first time I called the patient back after sitting in a psychiatrist's office and watching that happen. I was curious, like, does that really work? So I called the guy back and I said, "Hey, I was with you when last week when the psychiatrist told you to ignore the voices, that they were hallucinations." I said, "Well, how's that working for you?" He said, "It's not."
It's like bad.
They get louder. Yeah. So I started asking the rest of them. I said, "What happens when you ignore the voices?" Every single one of them said they get louder. They will not be ignored.
Yeah, my advice for young men for getting off pornography, because I think pornography festers voices too, is they got to get into something else. Like you can't just not do something. Like the negative, you can't just exist in a negative. Like you can't be like, "Okay, I'm not going to watch porn anymore." You're just like, you got to start watching something else. Like you have to put your attention somewhere else, something else, or else it's just going to come back. Like that's why they want you bored, isolated, depressed, because you won't be able to quit. There's no way. That's why I got into like moon landing videos.
Well, they want you stuck in physical reality and not paying attention to the spirit.
Yeah.
Porn does that. You're stuck in physical reality.
Yeah.
You're not paying attention to spirit. Same thing with crime. It's stealing money, stealing physical objects. They want you fixated on the physical, so you don't have time to think about the spiritual.
So Fasting Bear asks, can you ask Jerry if he thinks exercising helps work out the demon voices? Exorcist equal exercise. work out the demons. In my experience, people always feel better and happier when they have a steady exercise routine.
Yeah, that would help, but they don't want you to do that. They don't want you to feel better. They don't want you to exercise. So they'll come up with all kinds of excuses. Oh, well, it's bad weather, or don't you have something else to do, or, why don't you do this instead? I mean, they'll talk you out of it. They don't want you exercising. And they're parasites. They are parasites. They drain your energy. So what they have to do is keep you down to a low level of thought, negative thought. And you can even test that out with strength testing. I mean, put your arm straight out. Think a positive thought, then have somebody push your arm down. It'll hold its strength. Then think the worst thing that ever happened to you, boom, and you lose your strength. So they're feeding off of all of us. Every negative thought they put in your head, if you buy into it, that's energy that goes to them, because your energy flows with where you put your attention. And if you put your attention on negative stuff, that's where your energy flows. That's where it goes.
Check one. That's weird. That's a little.
How about now?
Yeah. I got your back. Nice.
Yeah, that's not unusual for stuff like that to happen.
Dude, I've had that happen when I'm having an interview with somebody and things are getting really productive. There's like an electronic attack. I've seen that many times.
I have too. It's almost it's almost unusual if it doesn't happen.
Isn't that crazy? It's like
that's crazy.
You can have a talk about how great drinking and porn is for 8 hours and nothing ever happens. The minute you start really getting to the bottom, I've seen like it start glitching and start like things happen that make no sense. But yet I could watch a Disney movie, no problem.
Yeah.
Happens
almost every time.
I just lost your audio again. They turned off the audio. I can't hear you again. Do you got what was the button you hit? Check one, check two.
They keep knocking at the ports.
That's hilarious. Dude. Okay, so
okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah. This is wild.
They keep wiping out the ports. Energetic vampires. They were parasites, energetic parasites. And I'd already seen that. I saw the truth of it because I saw so many. I mean, some of these prisoners were so drained by suffering from their voices all night that they couldn't even get up in the morning to eat breakfast. They described it as like working out in the hot sun all day with a pickaxe. That's how drained they were after a night of being attacked by these voices. So I was thinking, well, it's because of the bad things that they're telling them all the time. And it feels like this icky electrical feeling. There's no other feeling in life like it. I can't. The closest I could get is like a cross between like your hair standing up on edge and goosebumps. It's this icky electrical feeling. So I could tell when they were getting angry. So it was like a warning. So that feeling helped a lot. Because I could sit these guys down and I could feel these things. And I'd ask, are you hearing voices? And they go, no, I'm not hearing voices. And I could say, yes, you are. And this is how strong they are. And they were shocked. They go, how do you know? Do you hear voices too? I said, no, I don't hear voices. I said, I can feel them. Yeah. And, you have to jump through their hoops to even gain access to a clinical population. If you were to walk up to a prison and go, hey, I want to talk to the schizophrenics, you wouldn't even get past the front gate. Or I want to research schizophrenics. No way. Or if you went into a mental hospital and say, hey, I'd like to talk to some of the schizophrenics, you'd never get in. Or even a mental health center. They will not allow researchers in there. All this garbage that's coming out is coming out from the universities who are controlled by big pharma and the psychiatric mafia, making their $14.7 billion a year. They're not being done by real researchers, and the real researchers who are trying to do something are not getting their articles published. Anything that interferes with their $14.7 billion. The only thing really useful that I found, except for maybe experimental psychology and some counseling techniques, basic counseling techniques. Where's the DSM? Because this diagnostic and statistical mental disorders is their Bible. That's what they label all this stuff with. That's how they communicate with each other. They've got this big, thick book with segments of human behavior, and they've pathologized it. Okay, that DSM is a complete work of fiction. They've made all these things up. They broke human behavior up and pathologized it. Every single one of the more than 296 psychiatric disorders in the DSM-5 and later have been completely made up by a group of psychiatrists, 2/3 of which are in cahoots with the pharmaceutical industry. They've created all these mental disorders. They made them up out of nothing, and they're growing every year. So in 1952, the DSM had 106 psychiatric disorders. By 1980, there were 256. So here they are making these things up, going, oh, which ones can we treat with these drugs? We'll come up with some kind of drug to treat these things, and then they put them in there. So they vote them in and they vote them out.